and welcome back to Asteri Sofia Kairos. This is your weekly Astro forecast for the 14th of January from the astrology collective that is Asteri Sofia Kairos. And my name's Sonia from Celestia Astrology. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a busy week coming up this week, a lot happening in the last decan, which is the last 10 degrees of Capricorn, before we wave goodbye to our time in Capricorn with the planning and the foundation setting that we've been doing, and we move into area Aquarius. Aquarius season starts this week as the sun moves into Aquarius on the 19th. But here are all the transits for this week as we go Wednesday to Wednesday. On the 14th, we have Mercury in Capricorn opposite Jupiter in Cancer at 19 degrees. On the 17th, Venus will enter Aquarius and should immediately be in engagement with Pluto. And on the same day, we have the Sun in Capricorn trining Uranus in Taurus at 27 degrees. On the 18th, the following day, we have Mercury in Capricorn conjunct Mars at 26 degrees. And that will be immediately followed by the new moon in Capricorn. So the new moon is going to carry that energy of that Mercury-Mars conjunction. And that new moon will be at 28 degrees. On the 19th, the sun is going to enter Aquarius, and we'll also see that Venus will make her conjunction with Pluto exact at 3 degrees then. And then finally, to close the week, Mercury will enter Aquarius. I would say this is a time when choices are carrying weight. We've been through the first 2 weeks where we gain some clarity because we've got cycles ending and cycles starting as these planets are meeting the sun. It's important to remember that before they meet the sun where they're empowered, these planets are actually combust. They're either under the beams, they're invisible to our human eye, but then they're burned up by the rays of the sun. So they're harmed by the sun. In the same way that if we go out without sunscreen or a hat to protect us from the rays of the sun, we can only stay out for a short while before we start to become at risk of sunstroke if the sun is very bright and strong, or the sun will damage our skin. When they get within this 1 degree range of the sun, then they become protected by the sun. They're actually in the throne room with the sun, and that is that protected position. And that also signifies the beginning of this new cycle for them. So we see that things are closing as they're ending out the cycles and something new is preparing to begin. But we don't know exactly what that is. We can be intentional with it and plant the seeds of what we want to see growing in the Capricorn area of our chart. So if you know where Capricorn is in your chart, if you don't know, do by all means reach out to us. Most of the Asteri Sofia Kairos astrologers have something on their websites or in their teachings that show you how to create your own charts, that you can find out for yourself where Capricorn is in your own chart. You would need to know your birth time to do that. So let's look at the Mercury opposite Jupiter. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. And they're all mutable or double-bodied signs. So that means they've got two natures. They can shift and change. They're adaptable. They change when the facts change. They don't hold on to past patterns, which is great. The struggle with that can be that they can have multiple projects going at one time and they can find it difficult to complete things. So these are both planets that are juggling, say, multiple things. Jupiter is looking at the big picture. Mercury wants to be more granular. We've got a reality check here going on when these two planets are in opposition. They both have different aims. Mercury in Capricorn is dealing with facts and timelines and constraints. There's something he wants to build that's going to be lasting here. And Jupiter in Cancer is magnifying our feelings, our family histories. He's concerned with nurturing and personal meanings. And oppositions can exaggerate any tension between those two aims. So for us, this can look like thinking that something is bigger than it actually is, that those feelings can come in. And ideally, we want our projects to be aligned with our feelings and our beliefs and our values. We can react emotionally to feedback that's actually just practical and constructive. So that's something that we might need to watch out for. We can find ourselves over-explaining, over-justifying, or over-worrying, which is a particular thing. The thoughts can get in the way and become self-sabotage because the feelings seem so big. And Mercury is concerned with our thoughts and our feelings and our words. And those feelings might spill into that. You might notice that conversations go off track. Jupiter is buoyant, but at the moment with it being retrograde, it can lead to setbacks and delays. So that can derail the focus of what Mercury is trying to concentrate on. Your plans that should be pragmatic can suddenly feel more emotionally loaded, and you might not be able to put your finger on exactly what that is or where it's coming from. And that might be because Jupiter is retrograde, or it might be because of Mercury's nature here being so close to the sun. Where it is combust, it's hard for us to see exactly what Mercury wants to communicate to us. It's more difficult for us to access. So really, these plans and everything, it's not something that we're wanting to get out into the world yet. This is really a time to just slow down and let those things rise internally for us. Like we're kind of creating a stew or a soup, but it's something that we just need to let simmer and let the flavors all blend and melt and marinate. So it's like this is all a big marinading recipe at the moment that's going on internally. You might want to ask yourself, if you're trying to solve a problem and it's getting frustrating because of the difficulty of bringing these things into reality at the moment, because of the proximity with these planets to the sun, what is the actual problem that you're trying to solve? Sometimes we can be trying to solve things with actions that are slightly misdirected. So strip it back or take some time away from it, take a break and then return to it and simplify things to get to the heart of what it is that you're trying to achieve. Just ask yourself what the next straightforward step would be. Keep it grounded. Capricorn is earthy and problem solving. It wants to deal with what's the next actionable step that it can take. So on the 17th, Venus will enter Aquarius and then the sun will trine Uranus. So if we look at Venus entering Aquarius, this feels like a tone shift. Venus in Capricorn has been about commitment, responsibility, and sort of making effort to prove our worth, to achieve our desires through practical, actionable steps. And in Aquarius, Venus is looking for honesty and space and connecting through ideas. This is an air sign now. So it's about thoughts and more collective dreams as well and visions. So Venus here could show up as wanting clearer boundaries in relationships because she represents how people connect. But in Aquarius, this is about Saturn and what we say no to as well. Both Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by Saturn, but Capricorn is the feminine expression. And when I say feminine, I don't mean gender. It's more about two. If masculine is about the one, feminine multiplies things and is about taking something and making more from it. Whereas masculine is focused on external action out in the world and outwardly expressive. So if you think of the yin and yang signs, it describes this cusp where we see that switch from one to the other, but the ruler stays the same. So Venus is still in this stellium, but she's out of sign because we see that she's still in engagement with the sun. She's still within 3 degrees. She's still burned up by those rays of the sun, but she's now in engagement with Pluto as well. So this is a difficult position, I would say, for Venus. And we'll talk about it more when we get to Venus conjunct Pluto nearer the end of the week. But you might feel that vibe shift as she moves into Aquarius. The ingress often carries the weight. Then we have the sun trine Uranus. And when the sun trines the outer planets, that often indicates that the planet is shortly to change direction or that it has recently changed direction. And Uranus will change direction at the beginning of next month. So it's completing its journey here in Taurus now. And it's been in Taurus since 2018. It'll be about 18 years by the time it moves into Gemini for good, for our lifetimes, I guess. So it's a good time to reflect when it stations and the sun will be illuminating like the last retrograde of Uranus in Taurus. And it'll be a time for us to start reflecting on what that journey, that 8-year progress through the Taurus part of our charts has been about. And I've put here the monk walking and also Uranus on its side, because Uranus is the only planet where the rings are vertical rather than horizontal. To remind us of how Uranus is a planet that just does things differently. It's eccentric. It doesn't conform to expectations. So it's a little bit out of the box. And it's a planet that draws us to freedom and liberation. I think this is what everybody I'm speaking to recently is asking me, have I heard of the monks walking for peace? And I'm told that there's some opposition to them, which is hard to understand really, because it's such a beautiful, peaceful movement, such a needed signal in these troubled times that we have, the beauty and simplicity of what they're doing and how they're touching people who are moved by what they're doing. And also those people who are agitated by what they're doing. I think it's holding a mirror up to what is it touching within them that they're reacting so strongly to what they're doing. And I think we can see this all reflected at this time with the Sun trine Uranus. It's subtle, the trine, but it can also bring swift events. There's a speed to trines because nothing's obstructing that flow. It's like dominoes falling. Whatever these planets are signifying, the sun is illuminating and Uranus is pulling us towards that freedom and that liberation, letting go of the old. And of course, in Capricorn, this is all about the old structures and what will we keep? What is it time for us to let go of? And Taurus is a very fixed sign and finds it hard to let go. So this offers us a constructive release point. And for us, maybe this can look like changing how we do something, but not what we're actually doing. So we might have had whispers of, we don't like doing things this way anymore, but this will be the actual time, the trigger that when we say, no, I'm not going to do it like that anymore. And suddenly we get this compulsion to change. And it can also be bringing us insights where we find the practical workaround when something isn't working for us. And suddenly we understand that we can do things differently. And it can be a quiet realization. It might save you time, money, or energy when we look at these planets from Capricorn to Taurus. It might be subtle and it might be helpful. And it's a good idea to tune into what you're hearing and what you're being asked to change around this time. If something suddenly feels easier for you, take note of that. Don't question it, lean into it. And then on the 18th, we have Mercury conjunct Mars. So remember here that Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So therefore it's said to be in its chariot. It's not harmed by the rays of the sun in the way that Mercury is. So at this time, we've got these 4 planets now in Capricorn. We've got Mercury and Mars both at 26 degrees. And then we've got the moon and the sun at 28 degrees. So on the same day, we have the Mercury-Mars conjunction and we have the new moon at 28 degrees. And that will be a few hours after. The moon will have met with the Mercury-Mars conjunction as it was getting tighter and more exact. And then it will be moving forward through to the new moon, carrying that blend of significations into the new moon for us. So I always think when Mercury and Mars meet, there's some urgency where words maybe move fast. I think of rap battles or aggression with words. Mars brings the conflict and the aggression. Things can heat up and we might find that decisions need action. We need to speed up the decision making or the way that our brains are working with the information. And in Capricorn, this is focused on our goals and our plans. But we must remember that Mercury is combusted by the rays of the sun. It will be having its own Cazimi moment when it reaches the sun, but it isn't there yet. Mercury might be having impatience with delays and a frustration with inefficiency or a strong urge to just get things moving. This is a time when we're having the impulse to slow down, go within, make our plans. Mercury might be wanting to just get on with things. And there may be some heat as well, because Mars can heat things up, inflame situations. So there could be harsh words exchanged, or if there's been a tension brewing, then it could come to a head now. And it's worth bearing that in mind, that even if you're not experiencing this too strongly, that it might hit other people's charts around you in a more intense way than it's affecting yours. If harsh words are spoken, please bear in mind that people might not mean it, and just take a beat. If you listen to my mindfulness, you will know that we can use our mindful anchor before we respond to situations. And that would be important advice on this day. It's not a time that we want to be making emotional discussions, although it might be a good time. If there has been an issue you've wanted to address and you've struggled to bring it up, this might be a good time when you've got the courage to do so. But also bear in mind that others might not respond in the way that they normally do. They might be having more of the Mars heated reaction. But maybe if you can bring it up at a distance, say, for example, send an email where you're not having that face-to-face conflict. So it's a little bit arm's length. It's a good time for cutting through procrastination. If you want to set firm boundaries around something, it's a good time to lay those out, either planning them for yourself or communicating them at a distance. it's a good time if you need to say what needs to be said. If there's been an elephant in the room for some time, you can speak what needs to be said, but then stop. Don't go down the rabbit holes because they might be offered to you. And then, of course, you come straight into the new moon in Capricorn. So we want to release all of that. The moon has traveled from all of that tension with our minds and our words, and also possibly the clarity that the Mercury Mars might have brought to problems that we could have been avoiding. And then we go straight into that new moon situation. So that gives us an opportunity to release that and start a new cycle in Capricorn. And in Capricorn, we're looking at a reset of responsibility, direction, authority. This is a decan. I've put the image from the Wild Way Oracle deck, which you can find at thewildway.com by Nicola Allen. And here she describes this as secure and stable. The elk is climbing the mountain, but you can see how steady it is and how richly protected it is as well. And it's got its flying guide looking over it as well. And Austin Coppock describes this decan as the throne. You've achieved that authority. This is the final decan of Capricorn, the final cardinal sign. We've done all that initiating work. We're reaching the end. Cardinal signs are thought of as the hinges. They initiate and push things through for us. They're the turning points of the year where we see the equinoxes. The moon is in detriment here. So it's not able to fully reflect our emotions and our feelings. And the moon and the sun are in this sextile to Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn. And they're past Saturn. So they've taken that information from Saturn and absorbed it. And they're now applying to Neptune, who might confuse things a little bit, but also bring in otherworldly spirituality for the last time, as Neptune will shortly be moving to Aries. So it's the last time that we see this Capricorn moon with Saturn in Pisces as well. We still have that information from the trine, from the sun to Uranus is still separating. So all of that is informing Capricorn, reminding us of the Pisces values and our dreams, and Neptune bringing in this otherworldly quality, or maybe dissolving any boundaries and restrictions. Feelings are not leading us. The Saturnian structure is what we're looking for here. Mars is strong, giving us willpower and courage. Mercury is combust. So our understanding isn't fully formed, isn't fully accessible to us. So I would say this new moon is about commitment, about forming those plans, but there's still something which we're planting a seed on. But it's like when you get one of those mixed pack of seeds and you're not totally sure which is which one you're planting, but you plan to put those seeds in your garden in this place. So you might ask yourself, what are you actually responsible for now? Capricorn is a lot about what our responsibilities and our duties are. What is going to need a proper structure? And is that what you've been building? Is that what you've been planning through the Capricorn season? And maybe just choose one thing. We can't do everything. This is about the long game. And ask yourself what the next steps would be as the moon starts to wax and get fuller. And just focus on taking those next steps as the sun then will start to move into Aquarius. The sun moves into Aquarius and the vibe shifts. We see now the stellium of planets is in the air sign, the Saturnian air sign of Aquarius, and now we don't have any sight of Saturn. So these planets are now unsupervised. It's harder for them to reach their significations, but we still have that Mercury-Mars conjunction. It's separating now as Mercury's moving away and is now in the last degree of Capricorn. So it's an outer sign conjunction. But really, these planets are all still linked. They're all still in engagement. They're all still close enough to each other that this could still be said to be an across-sign stellium. So as the sun enters Aquarius, it's entering its own exile or detriment because it's now opposite its home sign of Leo. So the sun itself is not able to enact its significations as strongly here, and the Saturnian element maybe comes across more strongly. And as well, the sun now enters its engagement with Pluto. And we see on the same day, we've got Venus conjunct Pluto. So the Capricorn work has all been about effort and endurance and the long-term plans. But Aquarius now is maybe asking us why and who is it for? Our perspective widens. We see the big blue sky and the whole system, not just our task and our place within it. But some more ideas may enter. Maybe they needed something solid to be established or the seed to be planted in Capricorn before we could start this work and develop the vision. And we'll look at the sun conjunct Pluto next week, because this week we've got Venus conjunct Pluto. And I've given this image of a woman in her power, thinking about what our definitions of beauty are. And I wanted to look for something alternative for the divine feminine, because Pluto represents the underworld, Hades, lord of the underworld, and it brings the myth of Persephone to mind and her power, because she was torn between her mother and her mother's thoughts about the situation, and also Hades. But where were Persephone's wishes? You know, she actually was said to be content to indulge in her wishes and desires in that underworld. She wasn't everything that her mother wanted her to be. She had a side of her that was different to what her mother expected. So while Venus is representing women, we see this conjunction is about power and abuses of power coming to light. And also it brings to mind, how can we celebrate the feminine and the sacred feminine? And I mean this in the context of the yin yang and how that balance is really needed within society to bring equality and fairness, and how it works well when it's balanced, not when patriarchy has power or the matriarchy has more power. You know, when one rises up and there's inequality, hoping that we can reach a place where both are respected and valued. But we're asking ourselves questions about what is beauty, what is feminine power, what is the divine feminine within us, and how can we respect that? And that's within all of us, however we identify. We've all got a divine feminine and divine masculine within us. We've all got these 12 signs in our chart, and there's 6 masculine and 6 feminine signs. So we've all got that expression of the feminine masculine, depending on where the planets are. But how do we express it? And how do we balance it within us? And Pluto is bringing up those hard questions for us. It's intense, but it's also revealing. It's exposing what's real, what we can rely on and trust. And it can be a force that you can't hold back. I've been writing for my Celestia Circle subscribers on Substack about the Venus-Pluto cycle. I realized there was connections with our former Prince Andrew and his relationship with Epstein, and the revelations and how those were coming at specific points in the Venus-Pluto cycle. So there may be further revelations, because this is related to power over women and the abuses of power. So we could see more abuses of power coming to light, but maybe also a new relationship is being formed that will empower women. This is what I would hope for around this time, especially with the sun's conjunction so closely following. The sun is illuminating and shining a light on it and bringing purpose and direction to it. And also bringing in some of the masculine expression, where you've got the sun and Venus on either side. You've got the masculine and feminine at the same time. But for us, with the Pluto-Venus conjunction, this could show up as a relationship dynamic becoming very clear all of a sudden. Maybe you've been stuck in difficulties and the way forward becomes more obvious, in the way that I always talk about Pluto as being like you lift up a rock and all the insects that have been hidden in the dark underneath are suddenly revealed, and you see some of them scurry away and some of them are not sure what direction to go. And it's in that same way that the rock is lifted up on the relationship or the problems, and it becomes clear what you need to do. You see what's underneath or what's been hidden. It might be a desire that you've had that's been hidden in that underworld, shadowy place, and you can no longer ignore it. It's now time to act on it. And again, this is the seeding point of a new relationship. So it might not be time to take that action, but it might be time to acknowledge that it's there, or a time when that process begins. And it might be a time when you reach a sudden honesty with yourself or with others about what is and isn't working. So Pluto brings the truth about situations, and that can sometimes be hard truths that we don't want to acknowledge, or that we've been sweeping under the carpet, denying even to ourselves. It's showing the depth of situations, and it's also showing the lack of depth, where if we're seeking depth or we're believing that there is depth and there isn't. And then on the following day, that Capricorn stellium was cleared out so quickly after the new moon on the 18th to the 20th. In just those 2 days, suddenly all those planets have now moved to Aquarius. And with Mercury in Aquarius, you might feel a lifting of pressure. Mercury opens up the thinking into this air sign and gains some perspective. It'll also be ready for its own Kasimi on the 21st. So it will be moving from that combustion to its empowerment. You might feel that ideas are starting to connect again. And it's like there's a mental exhale. Capricorn is asking us for responsibility, and Aquarius is asking us for integrity, to think about the collective and how our actions and our decisions have consequences and how they might affect others. We're being asked to do the work that needs doing, but to actually reflect on how our goals and our values align with who it is that we want to become. What are your plans for 2026 and how aligned are they with your values? And now we're being asked to look at how does this align with our place in our communities. So this is the threshold we're crossing. This is what we're walking to with Aquarius season. And this closes out our week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for joining Asteri Sofia Kairos. If you've enjoyed this or found it helpful, please do like, subscribe, comment. Let us know where the Capricorn new moon is falling in your chart, and also what plans you're setting for your year ahead. We'd love to hear. And if you have any questions, do let us know as well. Thank you.